Prince Harry's life has been one of immense public attention, scrutiny, and expectation since the moment he was born. As the younger son of Prince Charles and the late Princess Diana, his life has been carefully observed, documented, and discussed in ways that few people could ever imagine. From a young age, Harry was acutely aware of his position within the royal family, understanding that his every action, word, and appearance carried weight far beyond ordinary life. Growing up in the shadow of his elder brother, Prince William, who is directly in line to become king, Harry often found himself navigating a complex world of privilege, responsibility, and intense public pressure. This backdrop is essential to understanding the events that have led to the current tension surrounding the Highgrove Accord, the secret agreement between Harry and King Charles that has left Meghan furious and has added yet another complicated chapter to their already tumultuous lives. The story begins in January 2020, when Harry and Meghan Markle, his American-born wife, made the unprecedented announcement that they would step back from senior royal duties. The announcement shocked the world and raised countless questions about the monarchy, family dynamics, and the personal lives of the couple. On Instagram, Harry and Meghan stated that their decision was motivated by a desire to balance their family life while continuing to support the Queen. They said they wanted to live part of the year in North America and become financially independent while still maintaining their royal connections. At first glance, it seemed like a carefully considered restructuring, a temporary adjustment designed to give them more freedom without severing ties entirely. However, as events unfolded, it became clear that the move represented a much more significant rupture. The royal family, an institution built on tradition, hierarchy, and predictability, had never faced a situation quite like this in modern history. Previous members of the royal family had abdicated or quietly faded from public view, but no prince in the direct line of succession had chosen to leave so openly, announce it publicly on social media, and relocate thousands of miles away. The decision left the palace scrambling to respond, as traditional protocols and communication channels had been bypassed entirely. Within days, emergency meetings were held, and advisors began assessing the impact of Harry and Meghan's move on both the institution and public perception. While the world focused on the media spectacle, the personal consequences for the couple were immediate. They faced relentless tabloid coverage, criticism from certain sections of the public, and ongoing tension within the family. For Meghan, this period was especially challenging. She spoke publicly about her struggles with mental health during her pregnancy, describing a lack of support from the palace and the intense pressure of living under constant scrutiny. She revealed that certain conversations had taken place regarding the potential skin color of her unborn child, an allegation that highlighted issues of racial bias within the royal household and sparked global debate. Harry, meanwhile, was navigating his own emotional struggles. The loss of his mother at a young age, combined with years of pressure and expectation, created a profound sense of responsibility toward protecting his family while also asserting his independence. In 2021, he published his memoir, Spare, in which he detailed his experiences growing up in the royal family, including his grief over Diana's death, his strained relationship with William, and the limitations and challenges of palace life. The book transformed what had previously been tabloid speculation into a permanent record of personal experience. It was a candid account that documented family disputes, emotional tension, and systemic issues within the monarchy, further complicating the public narrative and straining relationships behind the scenes. While Harry and Meghan had physically distanced themselves from royal duties by moving to the United States, the legal and constitutional framework of the monarchy continued to influence their lives. Under British law, certain members of the royal family, known as councillors of state, are empowered to act on behalf of the sovereign in specific situations. This role is reserved for the monarch's spouse and the next four in line to the throne who are of age and domiciled in the United Kingdom. As King Charles ascended the throne, this created a dilemma. Some potential councillors of state, including Harry, were no longer domiciled in the UK, while others, such as Prince Andrew, were embroiled in scandal and thus unsuitable to participate. The king faced a complex challenge. He needed to ensure the continuity of the monarchy's functioning while respecting the independence Harry and Meghan had sought. This is where the Highgrove Accord enters the picture. The agreement was not widely known to the public at first and was negotiated under conditions of strict confidentiality. The essence of the accord was to legally tether Harry to the UK for the purposes of meeting the requirements to act as a councillor of state, without forcing him to publicly resume royal duties or compromise the life he had built in America. For Harry, the decision was fraught with tension. Signing the agreement would mean re-establishing a legal connection to a country and institution he had tried to leave behind, potentially undermining the independence and privacy he had fought to secure for himself and his family. Yet refusing the accord could have left both him and the monarchy in a precarious position. On one hand, he was protecting the life he had carefully constructed for Meghan, their children Archie and Lilibet, and himself. On the other hand, there was the realization that failing to maintain this legal link could impact not only his personal legacy but also the future options and rights of his children, including inheritance, titles, and potential public roles. The emotional weight of the decision was immense. It placed Harry in a position where he had to balance loyalty to his father, responsibility toward his children, and commitment to his wife, who had built her life around the principle of a clean break from the royal system. The secrecy required by King Charles, asking Harry not to inform anyone including Meghan, added another layer of strain, creating a situation ripe for conflict. Meghan's perspective is critical to understanding why she was furious. She has long experienced the challenges of estrangement and maintaining boundaries within her own family. Her relationship with her father, marked by public collapse and scrutiny, taught her the importance of autonomy and transparency. Learning that Harry had signed the Highgrove Accord without her knowledge triggered a profound sense of betrayal, not only because it was done in secret but because it directly contradicted the agreements and boundaries they had previously set as a family unit. In the coming paragraphs, we will explore the details of the secret meeting at Highgrove, the legal and constitutional implications of Harry's signature, Meghan's reaction, and the broader consequences this decision may have on family dynamics, royal succession, and public perception of the monarchy. This story is a combination of legal maneuvering, family loyalty, personal sacrifice, and the enduring tension between duty and independence, illustrating the complexity of life at the intersection of personal choice and historical responsibility. The secret meeting at Highgrove was a moment of extraordinary tension, carefully orchestrated and yet fraught with emotional complexity. When Harry received the call from his father, King Charles, he did not know what to expect. It was unusual in itself to be summoned with such urgency, but even more so because the request came with a strict condition: Harry was not to inform anyone, including Meghan. The secrecy alone created an immediate moral and emotional dilemma for him. Years spent within the institution of the monarchy had taught him that questions rarely produce satisfactory answers, that seeking clarity often led to bureaucratic explanations rather than meaningful insight. Despite these lessons, Harry's curiosity and sense of responsibility toward the family he was leaving behind compelled him to agree. He told Meghan he was traveling for a routine charity commitment, a small lie intended to protect her and maintain operational security, but one that would later amplify feelings of mistrust. Upon arrival at Highgrove House, Harry was greeted by a visibly older Charles, whose movements were more deliberate, his stature diminished slightly by age, yet whose presence carried the same undeniable authority. The meeting took place in the Orchard Room, a space filled with framed photographs that captured the history of a family intertwined with duty, loss, and expectation. The choice of this room was deliberate, meant to evoke reflection and perhaps nostalgia. The conversation, however, quickly turned from sentimentality to substance. Charles spoke of structure, responsibility, and the continuity of the monarchy, rather than dwelling on past grievances. He outlined the legal necessity for councillors of state, the roles they play in maintaining the operation of the crown, and the complications arising from Harry's current domicile in California. The king explained that under the Regency Acts, councillors must be of full age, in the line of succession, and domiciled in the United Kingdom. The term, domicile, became the central issue, as it meant Harry's legal residence and the practical conditions of his life had rendered him ineligible to serve in the statutory role. For Harry, this was a challenge both legal and personal. On one hand, he had intentionally distanced himself from the UK and the royal system, seeking independence, privacy, and security for his family. On the other hand, there was the pressing legal reality that leaving completely would create a statutory void within the monarchy, potentially destabilizing the system in ways that could not be ignored. The Highgrove Accord offered a solution, a compromise that allowed him to maintain a legal connection to the UK without fully resuming public duties. Yet, it came at a personal cost. Accepting the agreement meant establishing a connection to a past he had sought to leave behind, reopening doors that had been closed for emotional, practical, and protective reasons. As he reviewed the documents placed before him, Harry realized the complexity of the choice. Signing the accord would not undo his departure or force him back into daily royal life, but it would require concessions, secrecy, and the acceptance that his departure was not as absolute as it had seemed. The implications extended beyond himself. There were Meghan and their children to consider. A decision made in isolation could strain his marriage and family unity. Meghan had built a life in California on the principle of separation from royal expectations, emphasizing privacy, independence, and protection from the pressures of institutional life. Learning that Harry had gone to Highgrove, met with the king in secret, and signed a legally binding document without her knowledge was deeply upsetting. Meghan's anger was understandable, rooted not only in the act of secrecy but also in her lived experience with estrangement and boundary setting. She understood intimately the cost of silence, distance, and unilateral decisions in family relationships. For her, the secret signing represented a collision between her values and Harry's attempt to navigate legal necessity, a conflict between principle and practical obligation. While the meeting itself was calm and structured, the emotional undercurrent was intense. Charles, acutely aware of the passage of time and the fragility of relationships, approached the matter with care, emphasizing continuity rather than coercion. His framing made clear that this was not about compelling Harry to return to royal duties, but about preserving the family connection and ensuring the legal functionality of the monarchy. Harry's decision, however, was far from simple. He weighed loyalty to his father against his commitment to Meghan and their children, against the promise of independence and protection he had worked to establish. The Highgrove Accord was a delicate balancing act, requiring him to navigate loyalty, love, legality, and personal ethics simultaneously. After a long period of consideration, he signed the documents, recognizing that doing so was a form of compromise rather than surrender. The emotional and practical consequences of that signature were immediate. When Harry returned to California, Meghan quickly realized something was amiss. Initially, she assumed delays or logistical complications had caused Harry's absence from the public events he had mentioned. However, as hours passed without explanation and no media coverage captured his presence at the charity event, her concern intensified. Access to his location confirmed her worst suspicions. Harry had not been attending a public event but had been at Highgrove, meeting with his father and signing a secret agreement. For Meghan, the sense of betrayal was profound. The situation triggered memories of her own estrangement from family, her understanding of boundaries, and the importance of consent and transparency in decisions that affect family life. The discovery required a careful, measured response. Meghan's reaction was not only emotional but also analytical. She understood the legal and practical necessities that Harry faced, yet could not ignore the personal and relational cost of secrecy. Harry's explanation, while detailed and procedural, failed to mitigate the impact. He recounted the call from Charles, the legal requirements, the domicile clause, and the necessity of maintaining a connection to the UK for their children's future, but Meghan viewed the secrecy as a breach of trust, emphasizing that the personal cost of the accord extended beyond legal compliance. The tension between Harry's sense of duty and Meghan's expectation for transparency highlighted the complex interplay between personal life and institutional responsibility. This episode underscored the difficulties faced by individuals in positions of public responsibility, illustrating that decisions made to satisfy legal or institutional requirements can collide with deeply held personal and familial values. Meghan's anger, though controlled, was unmistakable. It reflected her concern not only for the integrity of their marriage but also for the welfare of their children. She understood that the accord, while protective in a constitutional sense, introduced potential vulnerabilities, contradictions, and tensions into their family dynamic. The secret signing highlighted the enduring challenge of balancing private life with public duty, autonomy with legal obligation, and loyalty with love. It was a moment that emphasized the ongoing negotiation required to maintain family unity while navigating the pressures of royalty and public expectation. At the same time, Harry's decision demonstrated a willingness to assume responsibility, balancing the immediate relational cost with the long-term potential benefits for his children and the continuity of the monarchy. While Harry was processing the immediate consequences of signing the Highgrove Accord and navigating Meghan's understandable frustration, another layer of tension was unfolding elsewhere in the family. Prince William, the heir apparent, was discovering the situation in real time. William had always been acutely aware of the pressures and responsibilities tied to his position as the future monarch. He had spent years stabilizing the institution, managing crises, and maintaining continuity while under intense public scrutiny. From his perspective, Harry's departure and the subsequent secrecy surrounding this legal arrangement represented not only a personal challenge but also a threat to the operational integrity of the monarchy. Upon learning that Harry had quietly met with King Charles, signed a document that legally tethered him to the UK, and returned without briefing anyone, William experienced a mix of surprise, frustration, and a sense of betrayal. The issue was not merely procedural, it was deeply personal. William had been the stabilizing force, the one who ensured that the crown continued to function smoothly amid scandals, departures, and intense media scrutiny. To discover that his younger brother had been reintegrated into the monarchy's operational framework without his knowledge was a shock, highlighting the inherent tension between public duty and private loyalty. For William, the news triggered immediate questions. Why was he not informed? How could such a decision, with potential constitutional and familial ramifications, be made without consulting the heir? Did King Charles believe that William alone could not manage the responsibilities of the crown? Or worse, did the king consider Harry's participation necessary to maintain legitimacy and functionality? These questions intensified William's already complicated emotions regarding his brother, mixing concern for the institution with lingering feelings of rivalry and past grievances. The secrecy also had symbolic implications. William had long been seen as the responsible, dependable figure, capable of managing the monarchy during turbulent times. By allowing Harry to sign the accord privately, the king implicitly acknowledged that his younger son remained essential in certain legal and constitutional matters. For William, this created a dual perception: relief that the family was connected, but resentment that the recognition and responsibility were shared without consultation. Beyond familial dynamics, the situation carried broader consequences for the monarchy itself. The Highgrove Accord underscored the fragile balance between tradition and modernity, personal autonomy and institutional necessity. The monarchy, an institution rooted in centuries of protocol and hierarchical structure, was facing unprecedented challenges: family members living abroad, public accusations of bias and mistreatment, legal and security concerns, and the evolving expectations of a global audience. By signing the accord, Harry acknowledged these realities while attempting to protect his family's independence. Yet, the move also reinforced the complexity of succession and governance in a modern context. The operational requirement for councillors of state, the legal necessity for domiciled, adult successors, and the delicate management of public perception created a situation where private decisions could not remain purely personal. Every action, even one taken quietly in a private room, carried the weight of constitutional consequence. For Harry, this highlighted the paradox of royal life: his personal choices were inseparable from legal, social, and familial responsibilities, even when those responsibilities conflicted with the life he had built abroad. In the days following the secret signing, discussions within the palace and among advisors began to focus on potential ripple effects. The accord ensured that Harry remained legally connected to the UK, which preserved continuity and mitigated immediate constitutional risk. However, it also created challenges for public messaging, family dynamics, and security considerations. Meghan's anger, though personal, reflected wider concerns shared by advisors. Secrecy and unilateral decision-making could damage trust within the family and weaken the monarchy's cohesion. Furthermore, the move raised questions about the perception of fairness and privilege. The public, long invested in the narrative of Harry and Meghan's departure, now faced a scenario in which the younger prince retained legal and symbolic ties to the UK without full transparency. Critics could interpret this as favoritism or inconsistency, while supporters might view it as a pragmatic solution to an unavoidable legal problem. For Harry, these public and familial considerations were inseparable from his own ethical and emotional calculus. He understood that refusing the accord would close doors for his children, severing legal ties and potentially affecting inheritance, titles, and future opportunities. Signing the agreement, while personally uncomfortable, allowed him to protect his family's long-term interests while balancing his own independence. This compromise was emblematic of the broader sacrifices required in navigating life between private autonomy and public duty. Meanwhile, William's reaction was measured yet firm. As the heir, he had a responsibility to absorb the consequences of Harry's reintegration, to maintain stability, and to act as a mediator between public expectation and familial loyalty. He listened attentively to explanations from his father, understanding the necessity of Harry's actions, yet he remained acutely aware of the emotional and operational strain created by the secrecy. William's response illustrated the tension between institutional duty and personal relationship. He had to uphold the crown while managing feelings of frustration, jealousy, and protective instinct toward the monarchy. Within this dynamic, King Charles played a critical role as both father and sovereign. He balanced the competing needs of his sons, the legal requirements of his office, and the long-term continuity of the monarchy. By offering Harry the Accord, he preserved the family connection and ensured constitutional functionality without forcing public participation. This delicate approach emphasized the difference between authority and coercion, highlighting Charles' understanding that loyalty cannot be mandated, only facilitated. The Highgrove Accord, therefore, represented more than a legal formality. It was a strategic compromise, a bridge between estrangement and connection, independence and obligation. For Harry and Meghan, it presented both opportunities and challenges. The arrangement safeguarded their children's future options, maintained a legal anchor in the UK, and allowed for eventual reconciliation, but it also demanded secrecy, created tension within their marriage, and highlighted the ongoing difficulty of balancing private life with public responsibility. The story of the Accord also reflected the broader evolution of the monarchy in the 21st century. Modern royals face challenges that blend personal choices with public consequence, including global media scrutiny, shifting social expectations, and complex legal frameworks. Harry's decision, while deeply personal, was shaped by these realities, illustrating the nuanced negotiation required to maintain autonomy while honoring family and institutional responsibilities. Ultimately, the Highgrove Accord exemplifies the intersections of family, duty, law, and personal ethics within the British monarchy. Harry's signature was not a surrender but a deliberate compromise, a recognition that protecting the next generation, preserving legal continuity, and maintaining potential for reconciliation required careful navigation. Meghan's response highlighted the human cost of secrecy and unilateral decision-making, emphasizing the delicate balance between personal trust and institutional necessity. William's reaction underscored the pressures of succession, the responsibility to maintain stability, and the emotional labor required to absorb family dynamics while serving the crown. Together, these perspectives reveal a multifaceted narrative of loyalty, compromise, and strategic decision-making. The Highgrove Accord serves as a case study in the complexities of modern monarchy, demonstrating that legal frameworks, personal choices, and institutional continuity are inextricably linked. For viewers, the story provides insight into the intersection of personal life and public duty, illustrating the sacrifices, compromises, and emotional calculations required when family and institution collide. It challenges assumptions about royal life, showing that behind the pageantry and public persona lies a delicate web of decisions, responsibilities, and relationships, each influencing the other in profound ways. He listened attentively to explanations from his father, understanding the necessity of Harry's actions, yet he remained acutely aware of the emotional and operational strain created by the secrecy. William's response illustrated the tension between institutional duty and personal relationship. He had to uphold the crown while managing feelings of frustration, jealousy, and protective instinct toward the monarchy. Within this dynamic, King Charles played a critical role as both father and sovereign. He balanced the competing needs of his sons, the legal requirements of his office, and the long-term continuity of the monarchy. By offering Harry the Accord, he preserved the family connection and ensured constitutional functionality without forcing public participation. This delicate approach emphasized the difference between authority and coercion, highlighting Charles' understanding that loyalty cannot be mandated, only facilitated. The Highgrove Accord, therefore, represented more than a legal formality. It was a strategic compromise, a bridge between estrangement and connection, independence and obligation. For Harry and Meghan, it presented both opportunities and challenges. The arrangement safeguarded their children's future options, maintained a legal anchor in the UK, and allowed for eventual reconciliation, but it also demanded secrecy, created tension within their marriage, and highlighted the ongoing difficulty of balancing private life with public responsibility. The story of the Accord also reflected the broader evolution of the monarchy in the 21st century. Modern royals face challenges that blend personal choices with public consequence, including global media scrutiny, shifting social expectations, and complex legal frameworks. Harry's decision, while deeply personal, was shaped by these realities, illustrating the nuanced negotiation required to maintain autonomy while honoring family and institutional responsibilities. Ultimately, the Highgrove Accord exemplifies the intersections of family, duty, law, and personal ethics within the British monarchy. Harry's signature was not a surrender but a deliberate compromise, a recognition that protecting the next generation, preserving legal continuity, and maintaining potential for reconciliation required careful navigation. Meghan's response highlighted the human cost of secrecy and unilateral decision-making, emphasizing the delicate balance between personal trust and institutional necessity. William's reaction underscored the pressures of succession, the responsibility to maintain stability, and the emotional labor required to absorb family dynamics while serving the crown. Together, these perspectives reveal a multifaceted narrative of loyalty, compromise, and strategic decision-making. The Highgrove Accord serves as a case study in the complexities of modern monarchy, demonstrating that legal frameworks, personal choices, and institutional continuity are inextricably linked. For viewers, the story provides insight into the intersection of personal life and public duty, illustrating the sacrifices, compromises, and emotional calculations required when family and institution collide. It challenges assumptions about royal life, showing that behind the pageantry and public persona lies a delicate web of decisions, responsibilities, and relationships, each influencing the other in profound ways.